Goeiedag, mijn naam is Evan, ik ben migratieprocureur hier in Amerika, and ik wil you help om immigratiewet te verstaan. Now, as I'm making this video, it is October 1st here in the United States, and as many of you know, last night the US government failed to pass a budget, a continuing resolution to continue the budget of the United States, and the government has shut down. Now, this has caused a lot of panic on all of the social media sites that I belong to, such as Facebook of Afrikaner refugees, wanting to know how this will impact the program. And I made a video last night, but this is a follow-up to it since we now know that the government has shut down. And if you know anything about this or you studied the history of these government shutdowns, this can go on for a day and go on for a couple of weeks. So this will have an impact, of course, on the refugee program. And let's look at why and what might possibly happen, and just to kind of alleviate some of your fears, because this doesn't mean the program is over. It doesn't mean necessarily the program has been stopped, but let's be realistic and say that when you talk about budgetary cuts or any issues dealing with money of the United States, this is going to have some kind of an impact, so you need to prepare. Because, for the most part, USCIS, the organization that does the interviews and makes the final call on whether or not you're accepted into the refugee program, is not based on the congressional budget. Their operating budget is based on fees that they collect through issues here in the United States, applications, asylum, all that sort of stuff. So employers submitting for visas, all that. So their budget is based on fees, meaning they're insulated from this government shutdown due to a budget. However, that's just one area of the entire refugee program. All of the subcontractors, through initial screening, all of that, if their budget has already been dispersed to them, then they will continue to operate. But until a new budget has been, resolved and we have a new budget, once those funds are tapped, they will have to cease operation. So any group within the refugee program, whether it's resettlement or helping refugees or the flight tickets, all of those things, if their budget has already been dispersed, then they will continue to operate till it runs out. In theory, USCIS will continue to operate regardless because, like I said, they're fee dependent, they're funded by fees. However, anything else, through USRAP, to all of these organizations, to subcontractors, to any group that is helping with this refugee program, every other one of those agencies or groups is dependent on the U.S. budget from what I can find so far. So I did some research, did some digging, and just to make it clear, USCIS, again, being fee-funded, should be insulated from this. But everything else that does depend on the United States government's budget will be impacted and will be paused if they run out of funding and funding has not already been dispersed to them. So this, of course, will have an impact. Now, what does that mean for you? It means keep your ear to the ground, post comments here, let's help each other out and let each other know. If you have a scheduled interview, is it still scheduled? Have you received information that it's been postponed, that it's been canceled, anything like that? Post those comments here. Let's hear what everyone else has to say. Let's see what's going on. And let's keep each other informed of this because, again, this is sort of a kind of gray area because when the government shuts down, all non-essential functions stop. So, for example, here in the United States, immigration courts, right? All non-detained hearings today, in theory, and again, this is part of the problem when a government shuts down, not a whole lot of this is published because if you even went to the South African, the U.S. Embassy in South Africa's website, it even said we're not posting updates. Why? Because IT people are not essential, therefore they're not reporting to work, so you may not even see updates on government websites. This whole thing is a cluster. So, but again, one of the gray areas is, we don't necessarily know non-essential people, who that includes, who's not showing up to work, who's not allowed to work, who's furloughed, and many government, full-time government employers, the talk is even going to be fired after this point with this shutdown. But how that impacts all of these different moving wheels in a refugee program, we still have to wait and see. Because again, while for you, I understand it's essential for you to escape South Africa, it's not an essential function of the U.S. government. It will, though, come back. None of this is permanent. None of this is going to end the refugee program. It may stop it temporarily, but it's not going to put people at the back of the line or anything like this. It is simply the program will pause based on budgetary concerns and essential / non-essential functions until the U.S. budget issue is resolved and we have a new budget. So do be aware of that. But it will pick up once this is over. So again, I would not be surprised to see that USCIS interviews and USCIS issues are still going to happen. Medical appointments, background investigations, if it's conducted by USCIS or if it's conducted by a subcontractor that has already received its budget disbursement, then it will continue until either the budget runs out and they need to be refreshed through the new budget, or if it's USCIS, it just should continue indefinitely. But again, too, on that, all I can find about USCIS is while it is fee-driven and fee-dependent, I don't necessarily know if that means that they have the budget to continue a refugee program when they have so much going on in the United States. USCIS does a lot, whether that's work visas or asylum or all those other different things. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of variables up there, but it is only day one. They may resolve the budget today. They may not. We don't know. But you do have to be aware that the government shutting down, of course, will have an impact on the refugee program, but that impact will be temporary. So don't freak out, okay? All right, so as always, remember to like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you for the next video. If you have questions, comments, concerns, put them in the comment section. But again, remember, let's share our stories. If you hear of a cancellation, if you hear of a delay, if you hear of a postponement, put it here. Because for the most part, I would say there is no way that this program will not be impacted by the government shutdown with all the moving wheels that require congressional budgeting. And again, USCIS, while being independent of that and fee-driven, there are just too many actors in here for it not to have some sort of an impact. So I'll see you for the next video.